what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinTheMorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Liberty?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Special guest, Rick Vasquez, part of the family by now. What's it called?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
You can check out all the shenanigans that Mike G and Philly Chris are up to through entire the week, and check out our social media profiles. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who'll listen to check us out at MikeGinTheMorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams. Bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino, bringing you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro, bringing you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles, bring you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We are once again joined by a very special guest, the world-renowned Rick Vasquez of Rick Vasquez Firearms, LLC. He's got a tremendous career that included his time with the United States Marine Corps, included time with the ATF as an enforcement officer, and he's now in the private sector advising FFLs, teaching them how to keep their license and stay out of jail. Rick, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
I'm a little disappointed that you're not broadcasting from an igloo like we were promised, but nonetheless, it's great to have you. Now, Rick, you know, you had proposed this 3-part series. It's been tremendous. We've got a tremendous amount of feedback. I spent time at the Great American Outdoor Show last weekend, had a bunch of listeners approach at the booth and tell us about how they've really been thoroughly enjoying these past couple of weeks with your segments. So we appreciate you doing this with us. And they said it's been very informative, because really what we're doing, our goal is to help keep people out of jail while we fight these ridiculous nonsense regulations. And ultimately, today's episode, we plan to focus on what your options are moving forward to keep you out of jail. The very, very important part, because we've broken this down ad nauseum these last couple of weeks to get into the nitty gritty, talk about where these things may be subject to. But what I wanted to do I understand you have a little bit of an update on some of the information that we've discussed in previous weeks. So do you kick by just filling us in on that stuff?
Sure. We discussed 922R basically both times that we've been on the show, and there's been a couple updates on 922R. You know, 922R is the assembly of a non-importable firearm with imported parts. Well, when these guns were approved for importation, majority of firearms that were approved were imported firearms, you know, semi-automatic copies of AKs, MP5s, CZs, Brens, on and on and on and on. So people put attachments on these firearms so that you could attach an arm brace. So this was because it wasn't considered a stock, it was approved for importation. So two issues occur. I'm an importer and I've got all of these guns sitting on my shelf because I haven't been distributing since the rule went into effect, and because there's no way I can. I could be in trouble for sending out a short barrel rifle that's unregistered, so they're sitting on my shelf. So the assembly is the violation of 922R. So when you receive them as an importer, you obviously had somebody assemble them on your behalf, because if I imported them from Czechoslovakia, I didn't import them for the Czech Republic. I imported them for, let's use IWI because they're one of our clients. I assembled it for IWI. So the assembly is their responsibility. So let's say ATF decides that that's a violation. Well, numerous importers have approached the subject with ATF, and ATF, not in writing, has verbally said that they will be allowed to register these. So they can remove the arm brace and register them and not have a violation with 922R. And what just occurred just 2 days ago, an importer was told firearms that he was importing may have to be reevaluated. So the question was, why would this have to be reevaluated? It's already been approved for importation. Well, apparently, the Firearms Technology Branch is looking at the attachment points and saying, well, if it doesn't accept an arm brace now, can a stock be attached to it? And if a stock can be attached to it, they want to call it a rifle. So there's nothing in writing. Nobody has discussed this through ATF. So on behalf of this customer, I contacted the imports branch, and that is true that some of these are being scrutinized. But I looked at his approval letter, and his approval letter on this firearm had a removable back plate, and I told him to make sure that the back plate that he puts on this firearm does not have the ability to accept a stock. Because of that back plate, and if you're familiar with AKs, they have two little like studs that stick out where the stock goes in. So let's use that as an example. If you were to remove that stock and try to import that as a pistol, it would be denied for importation. But what if you'd put two little studs like that on that were only for an arm brace? And they did. Remember all the folding arm braces for the foreign weapons? They came up with all these new little devices. And everything is subjective. If FTB looks at that and says, I can install a stock on that device, they're going to call it a rifle, and it's going to be banned from importation, and you're going to have to be resubmitted. And there's going to be no measurement, no anything. It's just going to be a subjective opinion. So those two things have come to light this week.
And I have a feeling that the dust will not settle on this rule in total for quite some time, that we're going to see a number of developments continue to unfold. Dag Nabbit just mentioned in the comments over here, shout out to Dag Nabbit, one of the folks who approached me over at the show, said that GOA and Texas just filed a lawsuit against the ATF and DOJ. I did hear about that because coincidentally, Gilbert Ambler, who joined us on the program a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine and Rick's, was part of that lawsuit. He and I have represented Gun Owners of America for quite some time and sent me over a copy of that complaint. We're looking to have Gilbert on the program to discuss that lawsuit within the next few weeks. So that could also create another wrinkle where we see continued developments on this. Now, Rick, I do want to mention, I got a chance to take a look at the presentation the ATF did with their Q&A session, where they went over the PowerPoint, and maybe I'm biased, but I think that our discussion of the PowerPoint was far, far more entertaining and understandable. And just throwing that out there. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. But during some of the questions, somebody asked, they said, so an AR pistol with a buffer tube, because it has surface area, that is now an SBR, and they had to say, oh, no, specifically addressed in the rule. I believe we talked about that last week as well. So there's a distinction here with that type of a platform, is it not?
That is correct, because the buffer tube houses, obviously, the buffer and spring. It's an integral part of the operating system. So the buffer tube is not considered a stock. Now, as we know, if you put a small rubber cane tip on that buffer tube, that could redesign it into a shoulder stock.
And one of the questions that they asked, they said, well, is there any objective analysis? Do you have any sort of measurement for us regarding surface area? And the ATF's response was, no, we don't.
That's correct.
That would be too easy, right?
And I think I hit on this last week. So I get an AR pistol with a whole integrated rail system, and my barrel's 14 inches. So I put my sight at the very front of that rail, and I put the buffer tube in my shoulder and shoot it just like a rifle. Well, under this new rule, they could now say that I designed a rifle because it's all subjective. There's no measurement. Because remember, you talk about if you use this type of sight, if you use this type of scope, it could mean that you're trying to make a rifle. So that's all I have to do, because you can use either the pistol buffer tube or the rifle buffer tube, which is longer, for the assembly of an AR-15 type pistol. So with that, I believe that buffer tube, not remember exact measurements, is 8 inches. I could easily put an iron sight or a scope at the very front of my rail and put that buffer tube in my shoulder and use it just like a rifle.
And I know that I've criticized the ATF pretty harshly over the last few weeks based on this rule. I will say that I do this type of presentation and Q&A was helpful for a lot of people. So I will give them credit where it's due on that. Though there were some questions that they couldn't seem to answer, or they didn't give a helpful answer, at least. Remember, we spoke about the 88-day rule, and somebody asked that particular question during the live Q&A, and the response was, well, it's not exactly a rule, and we're doing everything that we can to do the best we can with that. And that was it.
Well, they say it's not exactly a rule, but you enforce it. So why don't say it's not exactly your rule,
right?
And in this circumstance, we're not going to enforce it.
That's very true. That's very true. Another question was, does the ATF have the authority to waive a tax? And we spoke about last week how with the taxing power that the NFA utilizes, right? Congress's specifically enumerated powers, this could create a legal issue for them. And they never use the word waive in the rule. They talk about forbearance, right? And they say that you'll never have to pay it. They're going to refrain from collecting it forever, which I think that functionally could create a problem for them. But the question was, does the ATF have the authority to waive a tax with that word waive? And the response was one word, yes. And they moved on.
Well, it's just like we discussed. They've now waived the enforcement of 922R, which is a statute.
Right. And there are questions as to whether they ultimately have the authority to do that as well. A couple of more things I want to mention about the Q&A before we get into how we can avoid going to jail on this stuff. They talked a little bit about constructive possession. And the example that the ATF, I don't know exactly what his title was, the gentleman who was speaking on behalf of the ATF gave, he said, well, you don't want to have your AR pistol. And I will note this, Rick, that I've seen on both ends, people who are on our side mistakenly use the term rifle when they're talking about an AR pistol. And the ATF repeatedly use the term pistol with what they are now deeming a rifle. So everybody's got it completely backwards on occasion. Everybody's a little confused with this stuff. But what he was saying was, don't have the AR pistol in the same dresser drawer as you have your brace. I think that was a little bit too lenient of an example, in my opinion, because I think you could get further from that and still be in trouble. We'll talk about that later on, but I wanted to throw that out there. Another thing, people seem to be confused about what they can do with these things, particularly FFLs. who have these in their possession, asking, can I dispose of these? Can I sell them until the 120 days are up? And their answer is definitive hard, no, absolutely not. At this very point in time, you need to follow the criteria, which creates a huge problem that I didn't think about for pawn shops. Because let's say somebody's got something in their inventory, right? They've taken possession. It's a pawn shop. Now the guy shows back up. He pays his money back. Well, they're not able to give him back what he's got. They can't give it. They can't even give him the pistol and the brace together, taken apart, because the ATF says you're giving him an SBR. You're unlawfully transferring an SBR back to him. So what are they going to do? Because the person's not getting their full value back.
A proper response for that should have been contact your client, whatever they call the person who took money from you. We just use the term client because it's kind of universal. Contact your client and tell them there's a change in the regulations and you need to come down here and fix this now, so that when you come pay for it, then we can give you the firearm back. I think that would be it's the same thing. I use that example as when a gun dealer calls me up and goes, hey, I forgot to put this on so-and-so's 4473. I know what his address is. Should I write it in? And you just want to scream, oh, touch it. Pick up the phone, call him, or get in your car and drive to his house and say, fill this out correctly and initial it. Same principle. If you have a pawn shop dealer who has, and there's not going to be that many at a pawn dealer, you're going to have a few of them that he knows where they're at. Call your customer, your client, say, come in here and remove this device, and then be done with it. And then it's over.
So the person takes the break and then puts it in one location. They come back and they take separately whenever they're ready to pay their money back and get the AR pistol.
Yeah, that's the common sense thing to do, because they still have almost 120 days. If a pawn dealer takes one in now, well, let me back up. We think that all pawn dealers follow and listen to everything. They generally don't, because they're into this. They log it into their A&B book for what it is, but they really don't study up on the regulations, because they're not really, a lot of them aren't buying and selling those guns unless it happens to run out. And a majority of their guns are generally like 870s, Remingtons. You don't see the really high-speed guns at a pawn shop. So unfortunately, a lot of pawn dealers don't stay abreast of what's going on. So if the pawn dealer knew, then he could tell them to come in and get rid of this. In 120 days, how many are they going to see pawned with an arm brace? So this is a very short issue with pawn dealers, and they could even send out a separate notice to pawn dealers or anybody and say, look, you need to look at this for the next 120 days and ensure when you take one in for pawn that you don't have it with the arm brace attached.
Right, because what they made very clear is that although you have 120 days to comply, as of the date of the publication of the regulation, you cannot transfer these things. You're transferring an unregistered NFA item if you do so. So dealers who have them in their possession can't continue to sell them for that 120 days. They have 120 days to comply, but the transfers will not be acceptable as of the time of that publication, which I forget what date. It was 12:01 a.m. on the 31st.
Friday the 13th. Remember, it was Friday the 13th when it came out, right before shot. Oh, you're right. It came out, but it wasn't official to the 31st.
Oh,
correct.
The publication, though.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So as of that point in time, any transfers that took place, there had to have been pre-compliance before that time. There are a bunch of questions about the Form 1 with this whole procedure. Major question was whether you have to make new markings. I want to hear. I'm curious to hear what you would say about that, and then I'll tell you what they said about it, because I don't think it quite makes sense. But
okay, when you look at a Form 1, I'm going to give a little bit of explanation. You have manufacturer and you have maker. A manufacturer is a person who's licensed to manufacture firearms. A maker is for Form 1s. How am I going to pay a tax if I'm not a licensed manufacturer? So 200 and something years ago, they created the term maker. So all manufacturers and makers of firearm must put certain information on the firearm that they create. So when I make a short barrel rifle, I can accept all the information that's on the firearm, the caliber, the serial number, the model. But since I am a maker, I have to put my name and city and state on that firearm somewhere. Now, it doesn't have to go on a stock, because the stock is just what's making it a short barrel rifle. The firearm becomes the NFA item. So my name and city and state needs to be there as a maker.
So what their response was is you will need to have no new markings, which I think is just flowing from to that this really is not proper for a Form 1, right? This is not really a proper Form 1 type scenario, and that's why they're having to make up the rules as they go along when it comes to this. But they're saying no new markings necessary.
Yeah, if you look under 479, and once again, now we're looking at ATF waiving certain regulations, because 479 specifically talks about what is required to be put on a firearm. And it doesn't, there's nothing in there that says, oh, if we create some idiot new rule in the future, then you won't have to abide by this. It says all makers and manufacturers must put this information on there. So I can see why.
So I think that's a product. Them having.
But what I was going to say is that's what makes so many in the public terrified, because you know what needs to be done. You're being told that you don't have to do it, and that's where all this rhetoric of entrapment is coming from.
Right. I did find it very interesting that so many people in the comments were asking about registration and blatantly things in there that potentially incriminate them. And it's just, it's pretty fascinating what people will put out there without any hesitation. So just a reason why this whole registration process could create a problem. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So, Rick, what I want to do next is Russ is going to pull up the PowerPoint, and we'll sort of get into what people need to know moving forward and how they can make sure they don't end up in jail in light of this new regulation. So if you want to take it away, here's what we got. If this is the proper slide that you want up there regarding the categories of affected persons. I believe that's where we left off, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it is. And I'll add some things that they didn't recommend also. And this is final rule options for categories of affected parties. And these are all the people that are affected by this rule. Unlicensed possessors. I don't have any type of FFL or SOT, but I have, my 20 pistols with arm braces in my closet. Federal firearms licensees, FFLs that are not qualified under the NFA as a Class 1 importer or Class 2 manufacturer, special occupational tax, SOT holder, includes FFLs who are qualified under the NFA as a Class 3 dealer. Now, the difference here between a Class 3 dealer and the manufacturer and the importer, licensed manufacturers and licensed importers are required to mark firearms that they make and import. A dealer is not. So, but a dealer could be selling numerous firearms, just like the regular Type 1 dealer. Same situation. He's selling numerous pistols with arm braces. So the Class 2 manufacturer, he registers on the Form 2 if he wants to. He's got 500, let's say, SP5s, and he put arm braces on them. All he does is fill out a Form 2, sends it in. He doesn't have to request permission. He's authorized. A Form 2 is just a registration process for a licensed dealer. The licensed importer, when he imports firearms that has arm braces, he didn't report those in the past. Now he must register them on a Form 2 also. So a licensed NFA dealer, importer and a licensed NFA manufacturer will register the firearms they turn into NFA items on an ATF Form 2. So that's easy. If they want to register them, that's easy. The dealer is just like you and I. He has to fill out a Form 1 for all the ones that he needs to register if he is going to register. Or he can remove the arm braces and just have pistols. Any questions on that part?
I do not. Chris, I want to hear from you. Do you have any questions about that? Coming from somebody who doesn't hear that this stuff all day and all night, you're going to unmute yourself if you don't mind. That's funny. It says that he's unmuted, but we cannot hear him. So he's got magic powers to mute himself without the mute button actually being hit. So I will take that as he does not have any question. Maybe he's got a really good question that the ATF doesn't want people hearing. So they've managed to get into our system and mute Chris so that he can't ask any questions. I'll presume that we've got no questions, Rick. I'm sure people would be blowing up the chat right now if they did have questions. We'll let Chris get figured out over there. Maybe he'll pipe in with a question when he does.
All right, certain government entities. This is very easy. First of all, if I'm a police department, the military, and I don't want to register my firearms in the NFA, I don't have to. That's just the way it is. Who's going to come into Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and say, show me your registered M16s? But they've already been transferred from the agency that they bought them from. So if they want to register them, they would register them on a Form 10. They would get them transferred in on a Form 5, but if they want to register them, it's a tax-free registration on a Form 10. But once again, this police department's sitting there, and he's got, they bought arm braces instead of stocks, and they're sitting in their car, and nobody's going to come knock on their a squad car and say, we're confiscating your firearms. But for realistic purposes, if they want to register them, they can register them on a Form 10. Next slide.
That works. That works.
Can you hear me now, guys?
I heard
we
you.
can. Did you have a question before we move on to this next slide with the tax forbearance?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, sorry. I've been having some trouble with the mic there. I got to get the producer on it. Anyway, I just find it really confusing, to be honest with you, even though I have the luxury of being able to talk to you, Mike, and listen to you, Rick, and be in the gun community. I don't have any of these braces. I've never owned them. And I, had concerns about that type of stuff in the past just because of all this stuff going on. Not that we shouldn't exercise our rights, but I still find it very confusing. That's why I'm kind of sitting back and just taking it all in for you guys. And I've had some friends ask me about it, and I'm just like, listen, this is definitely a situation where I'm going to tell you I'm not a lawyer. So I'll refer them to you, Mike, or you, Rick.
Let me address that confusing part of it. I'm kind of glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
How many inspectors and agents from ATF do you think are confused right now?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, based on what you guys were discussing earlier, and the current laws that are out there, and the police don't know what these things are. It's just such a mess. This is why I get so frustrated when I hear you guys talking about this stuff, and just in general, how our rights are so infringed upon at this point already. And, to me, as I think we talked about a few weeks ago, I mentioned, and we all are aware of, it's like, what is this really doing for anything regarding safety? Like, show me some sort of quantitative data that supports any of this is going to make any of us safer. And I don't expect anybody to come up with that.
Well, I understand that there have been 2 arm braces used in criminal cases. Right. 2 out of all the 40 million that have been sold.
Yeah, so right.
It's obviously a severe crime issue.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's a really good point. And that's why I feel like, and maybe you can touch on this, Rick, having been a former ATF agent, it just seems to me that they're creating this situation, whether there's intent there or not, by design, as I say on the show sometimes, to get a lot of people, good law-abiding gun owners, in really big trouble, who, are generally really good people.
I just to make sure, I don't want anybody ever to say I misrepresented myself as an agent. I know people call me an agent. Mm-hmm. I wasn't an agent. They're the special agents, and I was just a technical guy.
Oh, okay.
But to answer your question on that,
thanks for the considered an officer, right? An officer is it officer correct term? Because that's what I've been using.
Yep, that is a correct term.
Okay.
And I just don't want anybody to say, "Oh, look, Rick's passing himself as an agent."
I think officer sounds more impressive anyway, so we'll just call you officer from now on.
But the reason that guys like me understand this, ATF unfortunately has had a very small nucleus working on this program, and it was for a reason I don't know, but I understand it was they didn't want this information to get out. They were being forced by the Attorney General's office to do this, so they kept a very small group. I had a great opportunity in ATF where, instead of sitting at my desk at the Firearms Technology Branch, I literally traveled the world. And I'm just giving you some high points just so you understand how we stay on top of this. I went to Bosnia on behalf of ATF and shot every single machine gun from the Bosnian army to introduce those cartridges into NIBIN so we could have evidence under war crimes tribunals. So you learn when you go out and teach. And so now we have a group of people, former ATF, and some still with ATF, that we work together, and we share this knowledge. How do you interpret this? How do you understand this? And we're also able to understand the regulations and the PowerPoints they put out because we've done this, you know, and since we've done it, we can understand it. But you have some of these inspectors and agents that are just counting 4473s, or agents are only doing criminal cases, which they would rather do. And then you put this stuff on top of them and they look at it like, what in the hell are you talking about? So now we have the public that's even below all of that. And they're supposed to understand this on a PowerPoint.
Yeah, you really need to be a lawyer to understand it, or someone in your capacity, Rick. Yeah.
And that's what attorneys will contact me. I work with Gilbert. I work a lot with the Gun Owners of America. I work with Mike. You know, they do the legal aspect, and I throw the technical aspect inside that legal venue. And that's how we end up with, you know, a good product.
Yeah.
And
very interesting.
It's unfortunate that we've been so busy with this over the years, because it is that difficult for someone to stay in compliance, to keep their FFL, to keep their livelihood, and frankly, to stay out of jail, because it is that simple. You're always one misstep away from losing it all. And
the opportunity to get charged with something,
intentions of doing anything wrong.
You know,
it's a minefield. It's an absolute minefield. So we try to keep people on the up and up that way. Russ, why don't we see? We had a listener, Rick, send us in a cartoon that was made special and custom for you. So we'll get that up there front and center, Russ.
That is cool as hell. I love that.
That's great.
You need to send me that slide.
Rick is live from the...
that's awesome.
I will definitely send that to you. That's going to be the cover photo for this episode when it posts.
You got to hang that in your office.
For those of us who are listening on the air,
that up.
You're missing out.
And you will meet both.
Trespass, and you will meet them both.
That needs to be our thumbnail for the episode.
We have to get this for anybody listening on the radio. It's a photo, a cartoon photo of Rick with a rifle outside of an igloo. And there's a sign on the igloo that says "No trespassing," with a photo of a rifle saying, "This property is protected by God and guns. Trespass, and you will meet them both." We'll have to. That will be the photo that serves as the cover of this episode once it finally
Nordic
posts. So thank you to CB.
That is cool.
And we got a shout out to CB.
I love that.
The comments.
That isn't a brace Rick has there. Is that a brace you have on there, or what is that?
Oh, I got an SPD on my shoulder.
What is it? Legal? Thankfully, you're at the North Pole or something.
That's going to be Exhibit A in a case, right?
Yes, it will be.
All right, Russ, why don't you pull that slideshow back up? I had to. Yeah. I'm glad that you were able to get that up for us, so that way we can check that out. So now we've got the tax forbearance, which there are legal problems with this, if you ask me. I think it's going to be subject to challenge, but there are a number of other challenges that are in the works already. So it may go down. It might end up being a moot point. But what do you want to say about this, Rick?
Well, this one I can go through the slide pretty quickly. Anybody licensed to do business under the NFA, which has a special occupational tax, is not required to pay a tax on any firearm they make or register. That's why they pay and buy an SOT. So they weren't going to pay tax regardless, except the ones who had to put them on a Form 1. The licensed importer and licensed manufacturer, boom, they put them on a Form 2. But a licensed dealer, he's not licensed to manufacture, so he would be just like you and I. He would put them on a Form 1 as a maker. So the individual also would be a maker on a Form 1, but ATF has waived that tax, and it's going to affect the dealer that is unlicensed as an SOT and the individual who has an arm brace that has now become a stock.
Cool.
Rick, we got you.
Yep.
Yep.
You there, Mike? I think you're breaking up a little bit,
Rick,
Mike.
you
I think
dipped out
might
there
be
for a
again.
second. So if you could just repeat the last thing that you said.
Okay, go through the whole thing again.
Am I good now?
Yeah,
it
I
might be
hear
on
you.
your end, Mike. I think
No,
you
not the whole thing. Just the last sentence or two, I think is.
Okay. Once again, the personnel who are licensed under the NFA have an SOT. They wouldn't have a tax regardless. The licensed manufacturer and the licensed NFA importer. The licensed Class 3 dealer, he's not authorized to make an NFA, so he's just a seller. He would register on a Form 1 also. So myself, the Class 3 dealer, the FFL holder, they would all, if this was done correctly, have a $200 making tax. And I want to make sure that the $200 is the same for all making. So the $200 making tax, the transfer is different for AOWs, but for all making, it's a $200 making tax. And that's what we're doing. We're not transferring items. So if I had 20 arm braces, I would have to pay $200 per arm brace, but ATF has forbear that tax, and nobody is responsible for the tax.
One question that was asked during the ATF's Q&A was how this all factors in for the AFMR, the Annual Firearms Manufacturing Exportation Report, and that is a question that they could not answer. They said we're going to have to do some research and get back to everybody, and we'll put that in our FAQs.
That's very, very easy to answer.
It's a reassuring answer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who fills it out? A licensed manufacturer. Mm-hmm. So the Class 3 dealer, he's not a licensed manufacturer. Rick's not a licensed manufacturer. So why do I have to fill one out? That's a pretty simple question. But the reason I hate to say this, maybe they're going to have an AFMR Part 2 that says if you register, you made more than so many short barrel rifles as an individual, you'll have to do this also. But just think about it. That's what that form is for. It's only for licensed manufacturers.
Let's add some more rules.
So how hard is that to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
do you remember
that was the response that was given on that session? I don't. I'll have to double check on that for you. I'll get them to you though. I'll get them to you. I don't have that off the top of my head. I've got the video saved though. All right. Yeah, so Russ, why don't we? Are we done? We got to click on over, or?
Yeah, we go to the next one.
Cool.
Options available to all possessors.
So here's the Rick. I really want to make sure that we hit this hard. I want to make sure that we really get into this because this is where everybody seems to be confused. We had a comment right over here from Scott, one of our loyal listeners, saying all the bad tobacco. It seems the only way you are in compliance is to just totally get rid of your gun. That would be the real agenda here, would it? So I don't think that that's true. I think that we do have options here to ensure compliance. And so I want to make sure that we get this information out there. Although for people who feel like they're frightened and they don't want to run afoul and they're really concerned about getting in trouble, sure, you could get rid of your gun and that would do the trick. But I think that you can understand how to comply. That's our goal right now. So, Rick, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, the two easiest options are going to be remove the short barrel and attach a 16-inch or longer barrel, but ensure the overall length is more than 26 inches. That was left out of there because you have a weapon made from a rifle and a short barrel rifle. And you have to have a threshold of 26 inches. So removing the short barrel and attaching a 16 inches or longer barrel may not be all you need to do. You need to do the measurement with the brace and ensure the package is over 26 inches. Now, one part they left out is attach a barrel extension to the barrel, permanently attach it by silver solder with 1100 degree or higher melting point with a blind pin and a pin welded over, and that's a permanently attachment. That's even in their ATF orders under 3310.4B. So that is something I don't know why they didn't put in there. Permanently remove of or alter the stabilizing brace such that it cannot be reattached. And we've discussed this a lot. Just remove the arm brace, throw it in the trash, cut it up, put it someplace else. Your firearm is going to be looked at for what you have in your hands. And a construction possession, if you have it at somebody else's house, you can sell that arm brace. It's only an accessory. Even if it were a stock, it's only an accessory. The person who purchases it and puts it on a firearm without registering that firearm would be the person that's violation. This is just beyond me. Turn the firearm into your local ATF office. I'm going to get a fake sign and put it in my house and said ATF office. Please drop off all your AR-15 and pistols that you no longer want. And why would anybody turn their firearm in unless they're just ready to go full left wing and want to get rid of their guns? And then once again, the next one, destroy the firearm. The firearm is not a violation. It is the attachment of the new arm brace that used to be, the new stock that used to be an arm brace. Destroy the arm brace if you want to. Do not destroy your firearm. Once again, if you want to sell them cheap, give me a call. Register the weapon as set forth below depending on your category of possessor. Once again, if you're an individual, you're going to register it on an ATF Form 1. You're going to be a maker of a short barrel rifle. So those are the things that can be done. The easiest one is to ensure your firearm is over 26 inches and has a barrel longer than 16 inches, or just remove the arm brace and turn it into a pistol.
And from my discussion with folks out there, it seems that the most preferable option for most, when you talk about the pros and cons, is removing the brace and putting it in a place where it's not in your possession or control, right? You're talking about putting it at somebody else's house, who doesn't own guns, something like that, or she doesn't own an AR pistol, let's say, right? If she doesn't own, she's got guns but not an AR pistol, she's got that brace, that is not an SBR in and of itself, and therefore you're good. And when the dust settles, let's say these lawsuits are successful and this gets overturned, at that point, you haven't thrown out the brace, you haven't permanently altered it so it can't be reattached, you haven't destroyed it. That seems to be the best of both worlds. What do you think?
I agree, and we discussed that before. I permanently believe that this rule is going to go away. And the other thing is, when they come and if they know that you have an arm brace, remember this was an accessory. You didn't fill out a 4473, and they say, "Hey, where's your arm brace?" And you say, "I got rid of it. I threw away." They don't have a search warrant to search your house and find an arm brace. They're only going to search your house if there's laws that have been violated and you did something to make them want to search your house. But I just don't see ATF knocking on people's doors and saying, "Where is your arm brace? We have 40 million to look for, and we have 2,300 total ATF agents. 20% of them are in headquarters and supervisory positions." And I'm just being facetious. So you're not going to have people out there knocking on doors asking for an arm brace. I just don't see it happening.
I'd prefer to be overcautious and vigilant.
Exactly.
do
Get rid
not
of it,
underestimate
but do not destroy it.
That's a good point. Now, registration, people also have all kinds of hesitations about that. There's a bunch of different reasons why that could ultimately be an issue. We talked about the time it's going to take for approval, if that's going to end up being an issue. We talked about the fact a Form 1 really isn't the proper mechanism for this, and they could simply change their mind if they feel like it, as they have done in the past with other items. We talked about the fact that they're saying that if you have one of these things, it is illegal. It always has been illegal. You are committing a crime. You always have been committing a crime. And so as a criminal defense attorney, Rick, I tend to hesitate to encourage to send photos of the criminal activity along with their name, address, social security number, and fingerprints to the government. I don't know. Call me paranoid. But that's generally what we don't want to do in these situations.
Well, Mike, I'm sure you've heard of how many Form 1s or Form 4s end up having error, and they send a letter back, and then the letter gets lost. You get so much time to send a correction in, and you don't get the correction in time, then your transfer goes away, and you have to start all over again. With these millions of transfers being put in, how many errors do you think are going to be created just by the machine?
And if that happens and you are not approved, now they're saying that if it takes longer and you're past the 120 days, as long as you're in the queue, you're good to go. But if that application goes away because of one of these reasons, you can't just start all over again at that point.
Correct. You're going to be over the time frame.
Now, it would be a different story, Rick, if somebody had gone the route we spoke about, where you remove the brace, you get it out of your possession and control, and then you Form 1'd it, because that's actually an appropriate Form 1 situation, isn't it?
That's correct, because I think a lot of people misunderstand this. You're not allowed to make, assemble, put together an NFA firearm until you have an approved application returned back to you. So the proper aspect of this, which I have not seen this anywhere from any of these lesson plans or rules, is to remove the offending feature, then apply, and then once it gets approved, then make your SBR. If I was going to register an arm brace and SBR, that is exactly the way I did it, because if there is a nefarious reason behind this, they have all your information, as you said, and then they come knock on your door and say, we're confiscating your short barrel rifle. And you say, well, I don't have a short barrel rifle. I have a pistol that I'm attempting to make into a short barrel rifle once I get approval.
Scott says if they're mandating 40 million people to comply in 120 days, and people do, they have accomplished a gun registry, which I thought was illegal for the federal government. Well, it's the NFA requires registration for NFA items. So this is just effectively putting the round peg into the square hole and saying, hey, these are now part of that category. That's ultimately what's going on here. If you have anything else to say on that, Rick.
Yeah, to be clear, the NFRTR is a National Firearms Registration and Transfer Record, and that was mandated into the NFA in 1934. So basically, it is a registration under the tax code, and it is mandated by law. If you want an NFA firearm, you don't have to submit your name for the NFRTR if you never own an NFA firearm. So it's a voluntary registration,
So
Mike.
people often perfect. I often get the misunderstanding from people about registration of non-NFA firearms and items. They'll say, "Oh, I've got this gun from my grandpa, and I don't think it's registered." And I say, "Well, I hope not," because there's no registration for those types of firearms. Now, it would be one thing if you're telling me it's stolen or that the serial number is obliterated. That's a different matter. But there's no registration for your conventional firearms, for your non-NFA items. That is the one category where we do have registration in this country.
Correct.
All right, Russ, why don't we skip on over to the next slide to see if there's anything left here? Okay, I don't know if we talked about the. I think we talked about this in passing, but Rick, if you have anything you want to add about this particular slide about the registration, go ahead.
Well, we kind of beat the registration down and talked about not required to pay $200, but I want to jump down to the bottom where they talk about if the firearm is not so marked, then the individual must mark the firearm as required by federal law. They say they may adopt the markings on the firearms for the purpose of the E-Form 1 if the firearm is marked in accordance with 27 CFR. But they're leaving out the part where I told you, explained to you, that a maker or manufacturer must put his name and registration on there. I mean, that's a requirement. You can adopt all the other information, serial number, and no one wants duplicate serial numbers on a firearm. I could put a new model, new serial number, new city and state, new maker, everything. But all that does is clutter up the firearm. And once again, the 120 days, it started on the 31st, if I'm correct on that date. And this is one thing that's kind of critical. Must have had possession of affected firearm before the date of publication in the Federal Register. So you're not supposed to go out and buy 500 arm braces tomorrow and then register 500 new handguns with an arm brace as an SBR.
Yeah. Well, you can't do it under this particular program specifically because you have to have already had it under their rules. And people were asking that. They were saying, well, if I get one tomorrow, can I go ahead and do it? And they're like, no. And I'm like, why would you even put that in the comments?
Yeah, the only way they would know if you bought a handgun on a 4473 today, that's if I had 10 handguns been sitting in my closet for the past year, and I went to a gun show this weekend and bought some arm braces. You know, they don't know when I purchased those arm braces, and I'm not telling somebody how to violate this rule, but why even bring the question up?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then we could probably do a whole nother 3-part series on the 80s, right, with the serialization of the personally made firearms. But that's for a different story. All the markings requirements that we could get into with that moving forward, where people may very well bring their gun in and leave it overnight and end up with serialized receiver.
You know, that rule is very simple. I can make it at home. I can sell it to anybody I want to, and I don't have to serialize it. I can call my gun dealer and say, I need to get this fixed, and I'm going to come in at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Because most people generally use the same gunsmith, and most people who are into guns, and I'm going to wait for you to repair it. What repairs are necessary on an AR-15 or a polymer 80 Glock type firearm? You know, the extractor got broke. You know, the disconnector's weak. So they're going to be just a quick change of parts. But I'm going to tell you something ATF missed, and I brought this up at the importers conference. And how many slides do we have left? Because I'm going to have to leave shortly. Now, one of the things they did is if you have a combination of parts, right, and the tools and everything, I'm in possession of a firearm, right? Before, the rule was if I took my 80% receiver to a gunsmith and had him build it, he was a manufacturer. That's not the case anymore because ATF says that three-piece combination is a firearm. I can take it to my gunsmith and tell him to mill it out 100% because I'm the manufacturer, not the gunsmith now.
Well, there you go. We'll talk about, I think we should probably, since we were short on time, we've got less than 5 minutes for you. Let's see with Russ, if we get to that next slide, make sure we get you out of here in time. FFLs.
Okay. They, just like you said earlier, they're going to be treated just like an individual. An FFL who's not a class 2 manufacturer, who doesn't have an SOT, he is just like the rest of us mopes out there. If he wants to register all the ones he has on the shelf, he's going to have to do them on a Form 1, which means to him is, if I register all these pistols on my counter as short barrel rifles, I can't just sell them off the shelf now. Now I have to transfer each one on a Form 4 because an individual or dealer can do a Form 4. So now I will have to go through a transfer process, which is a paid transfer to somebody within the state on an ATF Form 4. So that creates that nightmare. And once again, must have had them into possession before the registration period was affected, not required to pay the $200 tax, and may adopt the markings on a firearm for the purposes of the E-Form 1. So those one things that everybody forgets. I'm a dealer and I put all of these on a Form 1. I can't just sell them out the door. I'm going to have to transfer them to another dealer or on an ATF Form 4, which is a personal transfer.
Right. And this particular slide is talking about FFLs that are not a Class 1 importer, Class 2 manufacturer, SOT holder.
Correct. They have to put it on a Form 1.
Let's continue on, Russ, to the next slide. This is if they want to continue on with that that line of business, right?
If they want to continue on, they must get their Class 3 dealer. So they made it even more restrictive. I even missed that part. You can't, once you make them, then you have to get a Class 3, put them into your A&D book, transfer them from an individual to the dealer, and then sell them.
And then this slide is particularly for FFLs that are Class 1 importer, Class 2 manufacturer under the NFA.
Yeah, this is easy. A Class 1 importer or Class 2 manufacturer, they both register firearms on a Form 2. And once again, this is an application. It's an automatic because that's, you pay the SOT to do this. So I have 100 guns and I load them up on my Form 2 and E-forms. I send them to ATF and it's automatically registered. I mean, it takes a few days, but it's automatically registered because you have that authority.
I think we're nearing the end here, Russ, if you continue on with us. Government entities.
And we
quick,
hit this early. Yeah, registered on a Form 10, as we said, tax-free registration. They could do it on a Form 1, which would be absolutely ludicrous. I don't even know why they put this in here. I'm a government entity. Why am I going to put it on a Form 1? I'm not going to transfer my guns later on down the line. I put them on a Form 10. If I want to transfer these guns later on, I just remove the stock and make them a Type 1 firearm and sell them as a Type 1 firearm, just a regular firearm. If I put them on a Form 1 and I want to transfer them on a SBR, as an NFA firearm, then I go through all kinds of complications because I'm not licensed. So I have to have a dealer to transfer them to, and then that dealer can transfer them to the individuals. So for law enforcement, the best bet is to put it on a Form 10. And if you ever want to sell those guns, remove the stock and sell them as just a Title I pistol or rifle. And once again, they have the same requirements with the 120 days. But remember, law enforcement and the government are not held underneath the Gun Control Act and the National Firearms Act.
All right, Russ, I think that's, if you go on, I think the last one is just, I believe this next one's the last one.
Yeah, this is after the fact. So once everything is registered, it's just exactly like I said. If you have all these transferred on a Form 1, registered on a Form 1, and I want to sell them, I must then transfer them on a Form 4, unless I transfer them to a dealer. Well, no, because as an individual, I would have to transfer them to a dealer on a Form 4, and he could then transfer them out to another dealer on a Form 3. So anybody who is not in a Class 1 or a Class 2 would be transferring these firearms on a Form 4 after they are registered.
All right. And I think that is it. They tell us where we could find all this.
We should have put my email and your
these
email.
Other valuable resources. Exactly. That's right. So if you want more information, you need a consultant, particularly for an FFL, you need to go to Rick Vasquez Firearms LLC.com, right? Or
yes, we do a lot with the NFA. That's Rick at rickvasquezfirearms.com.
Rick at rickvasquezfirearms.com, and we're going to be working on putting together a class for dealers to come on out and learn about this, but all the things you need to do to stay compliant. Because, Rick, I'm sure you've had a similar experience, but in my experience professionally, within these last couple of years with this new administration, they are really jamming people up. And there are missteps that are going on that are getting people revoked. They're losing their livelihood. There are people going to jail. And you need to make sure that of all your I's dotted and T's crossed. You could be doing something you don't even know is a problem, and it could have serious consequences. So our goal is to educate people and want to make sure we get the word out there.
And I only have like 30 seconds. But I want to follow up with what you said, Mike. When a person gets a license, an inspector comes out and sits down with him for approximately an hour and a half to 3 hours. And that inspector went to about a 3-month school. He's been in the field learning things. And upon completion of that introductory inspection, you sign a form that says you understand all of these regulations and statutes. And it's like 3 pages. And you because you must sign it or your license doesn't get given to you. So now you, without thinking about it, don't follow up on all these regulations and statutes. And 3 years from now, you get inspected and you realize you did everything wrong. And when they take you into a revocation hearing, they hold up that letter and said, didn't you sign that said you understood everything that we instructed to you? And so they take you down with your own signature. So that's why it's important to really study this stuff.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. We look forward to having you back on the program again sometime. And this was really a phenomenal 3-week program with you. Thank you so much for all of your valuable information and for really being so generous with your time. And we look forward to doing it again soon.
Hey, as soon as I get caught up with all my stuff, hopefully in March, I'm going to drive up to Philly and we'll go out to dinner, all of us together.
That'd be awesome.
All right. You guys have a great evening.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. Take care. Thanks again.
Rick. Appreciate it.
Oh, that was great. Chris, I'm going to let you take over for a minute here, okay?
Okay, sure thing. Yeah. Sounds like a plan, brother. Yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, for those of you who have watched to this point, you're new to the show, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm sure we'll have Rick back on, and we have some other really interesting guests lined up in the coming weeks. I noticed especially last week's episode got quite a few views, and I did talk to a few of our regular fans about Rick's appearances recently, and they really enjoyed hearing it firsthand from a former officer of the ATF. So, thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you can, and we appreciate you being here. I was thinking too, guys, I don't know if Liberty and Russ, you guys can hear me and talk to Mike about this, but I think it'd be really interesting to have Rick back on for like a more personal kind of interview, learn more about his career and his experiences and whatever he's willing to share with us about his time.
Absolutely.
As an officer with the ATF. I mean, just that one story he shared about his international travel and having the opportunity to shoot all those foreign firearms, and can only imagine, all the things that he's had the opportunity to experience as an officer with the ATF. So I have to talk about Mike. Talk to Mike about that and see when Rick is available. Wouldn't that be cool, you think? Yeah.
I think you'd love it.
Yeah.
Love that idea. And also just finding out how he got to where he got to, because it seems like these 3-letter agencies, as Philly Chris always talks about, are very untouchable. So how do you get in there? I'd like to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great to, have someone like him on, and, and I should maybe mention too, when I refer to these agencies, I'm really referring to the higher ups and the structure of, I know there's so many good people working for a lot of these organizations, like Rick, and they don't even necessarily agree with some of the things that are going on, but everybody's got to sort of bring paycheck home and all that. And where do you draw the line with what you stand up against in those roles, especially when you got decades?
Well, it's kind of refreshing to see somebody like Rick.
Yeah,
actually, I've got a good head on his shoulders, and he's smart, and he's down to earth, and he just it didn't go to his head. He really just wants information out there.
Right.
Because I don't picture agents, or not, I don't want to say agent, but officials, agents, whatever it is, but you don't picture them like him.
Right.
Especially when they're getting you on your own signature, right?
Yeah, well, it's just ridiculous. When the Second Amendment came out, I don't think the forefathers were, interested in us having to sign off for things and do a lot of the things we do these days. But we all know
it seems like the last part that he said really seems like trickery. It's like, hey, sign this before you know anything, and that's why what Mike does is so important, and what you guys are doing, just getting information out there, because the average person wouldn't know that,
Yeah, no, I don't know how you keep up with this stuff. I mean, you being around it regularly. You
don't know, you have rights. You have ATF agents coming to your house. You're like, sure, I'll comply. But knowing your rights is really, really, really necessary.
Yeah, and too many of them overstep their bounds. Heard too many stories from Mike about what people in law enforcement and government agencies will do, things they're really not supposed to do. But
what stuck out to you about the interview today? Anything in particular?
Again, it's just like such an overreach, and stuff like this. Personally, it's disgusting to me, because you're basically classifying like 40 million people. I think Scott kind of mentioned something in the comments earlier about it. It's like 40 million law-abiding gun owners, people who are following the rules, playing by the rules, if you will, and then they're gonna make this stuff illegal. And I'm sure people are going to get caught up in the system. I mean, how many people have this stuff and they don't realize what they have, or they got a gun they inherited, or, just don't keep up with the laws? I mean, you shouldn't necessarily have to be looking at the laws all the time. I mean, I suppose you kind of have to now, but it's just crazy that they can do what they're doing, and it's a far overreach, in my opinion. But what agency are we not seeing these days doing those types of things, reaching across the lines of freedom and our constitutional republic and all that? So
absolutely, I'd like to ask Rick too, like how, if he can name like a percentage of people in there who are more Republican or Democrat, or like if they just anything about that, the political insight.
Yeah, right. That would be interesting. Yeah.
If he's willing to even speak about it, because those agencies are not supposed to be like that, right? They're supposed to stay neutral.
They're supposed to, of course, but then you have human nature and all.
And you have human nature, and also what's that? What was sponsoring the Grammys? This Grammys. Same thing. We'll have to talk about this later, but.
Wasn't it Pfizer?
goodness. Yeah.
Right?
So that's what I was thinking. Like, Hollywood celebrities, and then they're, you know, it's all about money.
I didn't watch it, but yeah, I saw some of the clips from it. You know, I mean, it looks pretty evil. What's going on?
It was horrible, but I didn't watch it. Yeah,
things are they're not really hiding things much anymore.
They're not hiding things.
You know,
I don't know how I went from ATF to that, but I guess I was reminded of what's the agency? I'm blanking out that does the Pfizer and all of that. What's the agency?
Like the CDC.
CDC, yeah. That's considered one, right? The CDC.
Yeah. CDC, World Health Organization.
I was thinking how political they've become.
Big pharma. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's the stuff that we're seeing, the overreaches, and you know, you guys know my thoughts on everything that was going on during the pandemic and even early on. My thoughts on, you know, the masking and the jab and the zucchini, whatever we want to call it. All
we all know your thoughts.
Yeah, right. So, but it's interesting how many quote unquote conspiracy theories are no longer theories.
Literally.
Right? So, I mean, imagine what's next. They're not going to stop. You know, these evildoers, whatever you want to call them.
What have I missed? Have we talked about the State of the Union?
No, we haven't.
We were swaying into it. We were just touching on the Grammys for a moment, and of course, DG says Satan worshipers. I just want to make a comment that I feel like there's a lot of that kind of going on, but it was more subtle, and now they're just being open about it. Now they're just literally putting it on stage, literally.
Putting it in your face,
yeah. I mean, people have always dressed up for like Halloween and whatnot. And if I think before I became a Christian, like you would see somebody dressed up as a devil or an angel. And, you know, if you're not a Christian or Catholic, you wouldn't really look at that too much. But when you are on the other side, you want nothing to do with that kind of stuff. You know, just think about movies and everything. But it was like so blatant. The color of the night was red. It was just, it was sickening, to be honest.
I think they just did it for attention, to be perfect.
Probably, but it really is just sad, I guess. It's just sad because they are really lost. At the end of the day, we're supposed to pray for them, you know?
Right.
So that's really all you can do. You can get angry at first.
Yeah.
You know, but then
like if they were all dressed in green and everything was green and they were wearing shamrocks, nobody would you know, think anything of it.
Right.
If they were all dancing around with pizzas, nobody think anything of it.
Right.
Well, I mean, if they're just doing their usual, like twerking and all that kind of stuff, you know, doing the
it's all for attention.
Yeah, it's attention.
Nobody watches the Grammys. They want attention. They want eyes on what was it? Didn't Will Smith, was that the Grammys or was that something else?
That was
the Oscars, I think.
The Oscars.
Whatever. It's the same stupid thing where they tell us,
imagine he showed up at the Grammys and slapped somebody.
Somebody described it as just a bunch of, it's literally people in Hollywood giving awards to other people in Hollywood. Like
pretty
it's
much what it is.
Annoying thing.
Big giant party for the elites, and they're patting each other on the back and look at me, and you know, It was
Mike, any comments on it?
What's that?
Did you have any comments on the Grammys, Mike?
I saw that one clip that you sent over. Is this what you're talking about with where Madonna was there and there's the guy in the red suit?
It was that one song called Party Shop or Party Shop, something like that. Horrible song. Yeah. And remember, it was like they dressed in red and it was like literally like devil worshiping on stage.
That song is on so many.
It's on so many TikToks
videos on YouTube. It's on so many fitness videos, but I've never actually heard the words. I don't think that they usually use the lyric part. So I heard the song. So I'm familiar with that song.
It's like at the party shop.
Oh yeah, okay. I've heard that on the radio. Yeah.
It's everywhere. And you know what's sad is that, think about that, Mike. We've heard it on all these different videos for all this time, and nobody really actually knew the lyrics. That's how they get you. That's how Satan creeps in on these things. And now we saw it on stage.
You don't really know the lyrics to. It's funny.
Yeah, you don't know the lyrics, and you saw it on stage. Literally, it was just doing something unholy as the lyrics, and it's just really. And they had literally a devil on stage, and all these people around it worshiping it. I mean, that was so in your face.
Well, some people argue that
cage too, right?
What?
I guess there was a lady in a cage.
Lady in a cage. I mean, they just went.
Might as well go all out. Yeah.
It definitely, if you don't turn away from Hollywood after seeing that, I don't know. But the other side of it is there should be some Christians in Hollywood. There needs to be some light in that darkness too. So I wouldn't put down somebody who was in, trying to use their talents that way. But you have to, it's very hard not to get sucked in. You have to be so solid in your faith in order to go in front of those people.
Much more often you hear the other story, right? You hear the story of someone who was a professing Christian.
Right.
And then they're completely opposite. Like,
it's much harder.
Forget the lady's
like Katy
name.
Perry. Katy Perry.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, that's one of them. And then there's the lady who, I forget her name. I think she's got an Italian name. She goes by they now or something like that.
Oh, of course they do.
Of course they do. That always confuses me because I finally learned my theirs and theirs. Now it's like,
you know who I'm talking about? The Italian lady.
Lady Gaga?
No.
She's Italian.
Yeah, she's Italian.
Maybe Lovato. Is that
Demi Lovato?
Oh, okay.
Right?
I didn't know.
Am I correct?
Yeah,
that's right.
Somebody look that up. Did Demi Lovato become a they?
I believe she did. I believe they did.
Yeah.
They cut all their hair off.
Z
started
did.
Being referred to as they.
Right.
I will say though, I think she went through some serious like addiction issues. So
she cut her hair off, like she went full on Britney Spears buzz cut.
Nice.
Leave it to Liberty to make it a gossip show.
I'm doing it too.
A friend of mine called it the Lloyd Christmas haircut.
Well, I guess.
Do you remember who Lloyd Christmas is? Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber.
Oh right, yeah.
If Russ, if you're able to get this picture up, I'm pretty sure if you just type in Demi Lovato, they.
AT&T DirecTV's dropping Newsmax is so wrong. Eric Krebs says.
I think Fios dropped it too, or Verizon or whatever a while ago.
I mean,
yeah. If you type in Demi Lovato, they, and go to image search, the first two that pop up.
Yeah, I do that too, DG. I don't really give them attention, but at the end of the day, too, it's like some of us have to speak out. I don't really know what category I find myself in. I'm kind of in between on that.
Crazy.
Anyhow,
back to Biden.
Brandon?
I think Russ is
Brandon.
Russ is trying to pull this up.
He's trying to find
that way. I actually knew something about a modern singer.
Is that because she's Italiano?
Everything. That's why it sounded familiar.
I always forget Billy Chris is Italian too.
That's right.
And so is Russ.
So is Russ.
It's 3 Italians and a Norsk.
You got it, Russ. Those first 2 picks on the left.
Holy crap, she's ugly.
Okay, that's not nice.
Be nice.
The truth isn't always nice.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Really?
Don't say that somebody's ugly, right?
Let me assault your eyes with this.
Russ, eat.
Team Vogue.
That's a little too. Some of those are a little.
Yeah, I got a little provocative there for a second.
Yeah, there you go. That's enough. We've seen it.
All right. We've seen it.
No, you asked for it. Now you have to view it.
Yeah, it says Demi Lovato will now go by they them.
Yeah.
And everything you learned in English.
I still don't even understand how that works.
It doesn't work. It violates all the rules of English. No one person can be a multiple they.
Exactly.
You're making a lot of sense, Russ.
I finally learned, like I said.
Why don't you show your live photo from the State of the Union, Russ?
Yeah, give me a sec.
Oh, were you there, Russ? Did you go?
Yeah,
I thought I saw you down on the floor there after he was babbling after he was walking around the room.
Really nice
I was
picture.
begging
you weren't.
See,
Didn't you kiss Joe Biden?
There you go. Russ has got a picture that he snapped over at the State of the Union.
This is fine.
Yep.
I think the problem is there was so much. I mean, they want to talk about being fact checkers and misinformation and everything like that. A ton.
Did you guys know that Biden's speech leaked?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Before he gave it.
I was watching Tim Pool, and they found somebody tweeted it out. I guess because it was going to be like 2 hours long, and somebody on the inside was like, "Here, everybody, just go read this.
Huh?
You don't have to sit here for all of it."
About that.
But he was reading it word for word in some places.
Well, I mean, if you're going to give a speech that long, you don't necessarily want to. I will say this. I mean, we could make fun of him all we want. We could say that we know that he was telling lies and everything like that.
These are my ears.
But objectively looking at that as to what will the public take away from this, I think there are a lot of uninformed people in this country who will look at that speech and say, yeah, let's stick with this guy. I do. You're laughing. You're laughing.
I know what you mean. I only caught part of it, but the approach he took, maybe. Like the approach
I'm telling you that there will be people who don't know any better about some of the claims that he's made.
True.
And like his delivery. Because let's be honest, his delivery is not what we are used to seeing. I mean, there are even people who have accused him of, and I'm not saying this is true or false or whatever, but I'm saying there are people who have accused him of pre-taping that speech and everybody playing along with it.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Which I think the reason you hear that is because if you see him the very next day on stage, he doesn't look the way he did that evening.
Yeah, they must be giving him something.
His delivery was much better than I would have anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving him brain pills.
Just giving him something. They have.
Well, he was reading.
Here, take this to populate your brain.
If we want to be serious about winning in 2024, you have to acknowledge that there are going to be people who watch that State of the Union and say, yeah, we can stick with this guy.
I mean, after watching the highlights of it, I'm definitely going to vote for him again.
That's it, Chris. You're fired.
I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I did last time.
Yeah, I mean, he could read from a teleprompter that Russ gave him.
DG says, I've worked in long-term care and have seen patients in Alzheimer's locked units like Biden. Well, that's what you expected from the State of the Union address. That is not what we saw at the State of the Union address.
Yeah, he formed sentences. He had a couple of fumbles, but he formed sentences. And so somebody said on the news that the standard is so low for him, the bar is so low that he looked like he exceeded expectations because the bar is so low.
There were a couple of points where even the Republicans couldn't take it when he said stuff and they just started shouting. Did you notice those?
Oh yeah, well it was actually regarding fentanyl because Kellyanne Conway had said she's never heard the words fentanyl come out of his mouth. And all of a sudden it was fentanyl and they said close the border.
Close the border. That's what I was yelling at my screen too. He's like talking about we got these problems.
Yeah. And also something about oil.
It is so ridiculous.
Something about oil, Philly Chris. He said too, like something about the oil industry for 10 years.
For at least the next 10 years, and they started clapping. Which that's ridiculous.
Longer than
that. No way.
Right.
There's no way we're getting away from oil and gas in 10 years.
No. You know how many more slaves they'll need to get cobalt out of the ground if you're going to get rid of? I mean, not to laugh at that, but we played that video on the show, didn't we? Of all those poor people out there digging in the
I didn't know that. Oh, jeez.
I don't think we played that video.
Oh, we didn't play it?
No, Billy Chris, I was wondering what you were talking about.
Did we talk about that on the show? Maybe we were talking about it off the air, but
is it in the doc?
No, I don't have it in the doc or anything.
It'd be way back in the doc.
He just seemed like a puppet. Like he just seemed like he was.
Like, he is.
Clap
he
here.
Is
yeah, but like you always say, like it was like clap here, do this, everything.
It's a big joke. It's all a big joke.
Feel real.
I'm sure if it was pre-recorded, we would have heard something from the Republicans at some point.
No, well, the people who claim that say that the Republicans are in on it too.
Wait, hold on. We wouldn't be Mike G in the morning if we didn't talk about that kiss.
Huh?
I know. That's
big smackaroo right on the lips.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
It was Kamala's husband, right?
I did. So I did see that actually happened.
That was the
I thought it was fake at first, but then I looked into it and I think it really happened. Yeah,
I saw it when it happened. I said, "Did she just kiss him on the lips?"
It was a viral meme.
I didn't know who it was at first, and then I realized who it was. Did she just kiss him on the lips?
They're just really out in the open now, It
was a viral meme, and it went.
It was. So I did see that right.
Yes, you saw right.
Thought maybe I missed something.
That was pretty wild.
Was that at the end? Because around that.
Am I on drugs right now?
Brett Bayer said, "Oh, I guess COVID's not around anymore. Like now they're kissing on lips."
Yeah, right.
That's what I think of when I see. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind is COVID.
Did you see that monologue he did the other day? Was that Steve Colbert? No, it wasn't Steve Colbert. Who did that monologue the other day? It was really good, but he was a liberal
Was it
guy.
the
Bill Maher? Did you guys see that?
Everyone in the comments, if you watched the State of the Union, give us your thoughts.
Yeah.
Sum it up in a couple words.
Tell us how much you didn't hate it.
Or what stood out to you? I'd like to know.
What stood out to you? The fact that it was like...
I'd like to know. I'd like a poll, like if the general public thought he looked good, or if everybody still sticks by what they think that they look bad. I feel a poll coming.
So I'm thinking about this pre-recorded thing, right? So you have all the different, because the way that it was done does seem like it was pre-recorded, and if the Republicans are in on this and haven't said anything, then that's a whole different set of issues. But the way that, you know, he would take pauses for clapping and then the camera cuts, I think maybe it could have been.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
That's camera cutting to different angles is often a way to hide what would otherwise be very jumpy video.
I don't think it was pre-recorded.
Probably not.
It was.
Let's see. I threw it out there. Comment below. Do you think the average person will think
that's not a poll?
I know it's not a poll, but
because then we get to see a poll is it true? Because maybe somebody doesn't want to say in front of everybody that they thought he looked good. I wouldn't want to say
I'm saying it. I'm saying it. I am saying it. And if we don't acknowledge that, then we're going to lose again.
I ain't saying it. No, I'm just kidding. He looks decent. He looks...
You have to be objective and realistic and address the problem. If you think you don't have a problem, people who get smoked are the ones who don't realize they have a problem.
True, but look at every other speech he does. He's always saying crazy things.
It's not a joke.
It says most Dems will think he was great.
Oh,
of course they will.
Yeah.
You guys see that Bill Maher thing?
You could point to 20 videos where he looks terrible.
Scott says average Democrat and Rhino, yes.
I was
Normal people with working brain cells, no. Now, Scott, it's a good point. But do you think that most people are normal and have working brain cells?
I don't know how many normal people are left anymore. Everything's so crazy.
Let's put a poll out there.
Yeah. On both sides. Everybody's so divided.
Eric says, can't stand listening to the guy. Could not do it.
I heard a couple people say that.
It is hard to listen to him.
Probably why his speech.
Cable Man F250 says most likely it was a media delay and they cut sections out, but we were watching River Monsters.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, DG brought a funny point.
I love the look on the... What's that?
I love the look on decent Republican faces during the speech. It was funny.
Yeah.
Actually, who's the Speaker of the House? What's his name?
McCarthy.
I missed that whole whatever happened with him, but
didn't he try to calm people down or something?
He reminds me of a friend of Mike's, actually, but it's all I can figure out when I see him.
You guys having him over?
He
Paul McCarthy?
He was making some interesting faces up there. And I don't know. It wasn't like Pelosi. Remember, she ripped the papers and all that stuff. Like there wasn't any dramatics. But
was he the guy that said in the beginning, "I promise not to rip up the speech"?
Oh, if he did, that's funny.
Okay.
If he did,
one thing
was great.
One thing I saw on CNN or somewhere or Fox News was that they were talking about how Kamala the next day, everybody was asking her if she's okay, like on CNN and everything. Like, so how are you? Are you okay? Like they're checking in to make sure she's okay. I don't know why.
She didn't look too good. I thought she looked a little
because
off
the strange man walked up to the podium and claimed to be president when she's actually that's what was wrong with her.
Because her husband kissed Jill Biden on the lips.
Oh, yeah. She was having a rough night.
It's really literally every week there's just something crazier that happens.
Takes my
So.
job.
Oh, and is it Marjorie Taylor Greene? Is that her name?
Marjorie
Yeah.
Taylor Greene. She was interesting. They compared her coat to Cruella de Vil.
Oh yeah, that was some coat.
She had this wild.
I mean, if they're gonna make that connection, we should compare Kamala's scowl to Cruella de Vil.
See, what do you guys think of
That's
her?
what happens to your face.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's definitely Dalmatian drowning laugh she's got, right?
Right. It's like when your parents told you as a kid, "Don't make that face; it's going to stick that way." You know.
What do you guys think of Marjorie Taylor Greene? Because I feel like
I kind of like her.
She makes it kind of like theatrics, but sometimes it's kind of like,
Yeah.
well, it's already like this, and might as well go ahead. You
I
know,
like her energy, and I think she's got really good intentions. And
DG says that was a tacky outfit.
She went and visited the people from the January 6th stuff in jail too, which I thought was pretty
sometimes
cool.
she's a little wild. She's a little out there wild, but
she is.
I feel like it's
she's
like
our AOC or something, maybe.
She reminds me,
yeah,
right.
She has her moments.
She reminds me of Jack Nicholson in that one movie or something. It's like, all right, it's already here. Might as well keep going with it.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
She's got good spirit, though. I think. Yeah.
Dag Nabbit said, I saw Fetterman was back in the hospital today. Yes.
I heard about that. He fainted or was lightheaded or something.
He was feeling lightheaded.
Yeah.
They did some tests. They didn't think it was another stroke. But last I saw, they were continuing with the tests to make sure. I think he spent the night.
You think they would tell us if it was another stroke?
Probably not.
Think they would.
Probably not.
I don't think they would. They play it off as
you don't have to, right?
It was just a headache or something.
Yeah.
Which they kept him overnight for.
Well, hopefully he'll be okay.
Something ridiculous. I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel sorry for him. I hope that he gets everything squared away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Want everybody to be healthy and happy and honorable would be nice.
So here's a question. What happens if he has to step down because he's had a stroke and some other part of the brain gets damaged? What happens if he has to retire from his position?
What if
have to do it?
Read the rules on that special election.
You have to go there.
Yeah, I don't know.
What happens?
I think you step in, Russ.
Senator has to. Russ gets the position.
Okay.
You're a little more coherent, so
you really do tiptoe around the issue. But if they're going to go after, they went after Trump about his mental capacity and all this stuff. I mean, it's a fair question for any role when you're in administration. You have to ask it.
Yeah, it's funny how they do that, isn't it?
State legislature. Okay, so if a vacancy occurs due to senator's death, resignation, or expulsion, the 17th Amendment allows state legislatures to empower the governor to appoint a replacement to complete the term or to hold office until a special election can take place. I knew it was some kind of combination with that. So the state gets involved.
It's always great when the state gets involved. So, yeah.
Well, state government.
Rather than better than the federal. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Billy Chris, read Scott Fray's comment about saw the video.
Russ, then Kamala takes over, then Speaker of the House.
Go up to.
Saw the video. Kamala's husband looks like Bill O'Reilly. Maybe Jill is changing parties. Could be. You never know.
Man.
That's funny.
Is there anything else that's been in the news lately? That's it. Just
I don't know if you guys wanted to.
Joe Biden kissed the husband on the lips.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up the week. I did put that video in the doc if you guys want. I thought it was actually a really good monologue and it was interesting because it was somebody kind of on the left, but the things he said, I don't know if you want to play it or not, but
we
5 minutes long.
We could follow up on the balloon.
Yeah.
State of the Union and the Grammys was a lot.
Yeah,
I had a lot of stories.
Last time we played something with Mar, like that, we got a strike. So
did we?
I don't know if we want to do it. I will say this, that I've said this before, that personally, even though I disagree with him on a whole lot of stuff, there's some stuff I do to agree with him on.
Yeah, me too. That's how I feel. Yeah,
and even he is what I consider a good comedian, because even if he's saying things I don't agree with, I generally find it to be witty and funny.
Yeah.
Whereas these other guys like Colbert these days and everybody, it's lazy. It's not funny. They just let me just make fun of Republicans, and that's all I got to do, and I get to collect my check. That's that takes no effort. That takes no talent. It's not funny. You can be saying something that I don't agree with and still be funny.
Well, it's interesting because he talks literally about like communism and Stalin, like he's comparing the left to them. It's getting millions and millions of views because he really went out there and it was very well done in my opinion. But I don't know if you want to risk playing it or not. I thought we could always play YouTube stuff without getting a strike, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, we
know.
got one. Maybe
what was it for?
It was the Jon Stewart thing on guns that we did. We probably should have appealed it, but
okay.
It was his thing on guns where it was a legitimate commentary because we were stopping every few seconds and I was talking about whether he was right, whether he was wrong, and
right.
You know.
Oh well, if people haven't seen it, check it out. It's worth seeing.
I had a bunch of news stories from last week. I can rapid fire them if you guys want to open anything.
We're gonna do 1 week old news.
1 week old news. No, it's kind of still in the news. And by the way, other news, they shot down that balloon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 2 week old news, right? Or 1 week old news.
Right.
Yes, and he bragged about it at the State of the Union.
It took them long enough, right?
Sarah Huckabee did the
wait till they're done with their mission and they collected all their data.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that every time they tout this as, oh, we did it safely and we got it down, it's like, well, what was the point by then? Like, I'm pretty sure that it didn't have to make it back to China in order to get the information over to them, right?
Right.
They got whatever they got.
Yeah. Plus, it's like the 13th one or something. Did you guys hear that?
No.
And also, apparently, General Milley didn't tell Trump, but China did that a few times during his administration, and I guess he didn't even tell the president. So, to me, that sounds like treason. But
wow.
Anyway,
I don't think that was true. I think that was actually false.
Okay, I don't know for sure. But
second of all, is Biden going to be like reprimanded for these documents being in his garage? Or are we just letting this go? Because with Trump, it was like FBI raiding his house.
It was next to my Corvette, man.
No, for real. Like, I'm genuinely concerned. Can we file like a right to know?
You know how safe that garage is? I don't want anybody to steal my Corvette.
Nobody goes in my garage, not even my son.
Can we file something, Mike, like a right to know? Because how does Trump get these people coming in his house, knocking down his door, going through his house, and we don't hear anything from him?
Yeah, well, it's because our government was hijacked a long time ago, and we're just seeing the results of that now, I think.
Oh, another thing is, another question I have about the balloon is, do you know when they started reporting about this? Because the first I heard was Montana.
Yeah, I think that's the first I heard about it too, but they obviously knew about it well before that, and it's not the first balloon. I'm pretty sure
didn't teleport directly into Montana, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, I think they only went public with it after some people literally started seeing it, and actually there was quite a few UFO sightings. Supposed, that people thought it might be some sort of large craft, which would make sense, like UFO, because people were starting to put it on social media. And I think that's when they finally went public with it.
Biden thought it was the moon.
Because they had to. Yeah. Well, he probably thinks there's 2 moons anyway. So.
He's like, oh, look, the moon's out.
Yeah, they can see everything. Are you kidding me? The technology our government has.
Yeah, somebody said they could have seen it coming from like 5,000.
They could see it when they launch, like soon after they launch the thing, if they're paying attention. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's like whoever's monitoring the skies.
Yeah,
they like get a coffee break or something.
I mean, all the classified radar systems we have and the satellites, and I'm sure all these Starlink satellites are being used for that kind of stuff too.
Philly, Chris, and DG for laughing at my joke. Mike said it was a funny joke because I didn't say it last week, and then he didn't even laugh.
What was that?
That Biden thought it was the moon.
Yeah, no, that was pretty good.
That is pretty good, yeah.
Okay, so really quick, just to sort of rapid fire. There was news.
Come on out. Will you check this out?
Look at the moon. It's out there in the day. You can
full moon. There's 2 full moons again.
So there was an update on the teacher who was shot by her 6th grade student. She has lawyered up. Is the school at fault? Was the question I asked. But apparently they did a press conference with the lawyer, and it sounded like law enforcement knew many times about warnings, and administration were called or messaged about this, and so it could have been prevented. So before anybody goes back gun control, they should get some other things under control. I don't know if anybody saw that viral video of AOC. She responded to her, and I put a video there, just FYI, if you guys wanted to see what the lawyer said, Mike. I thought you might be interested. AOC responded to Republicans' removal of Rep. Omar from the Foreign Affairs. That was a wild video. New Jersey Republican councilman was shot and killed outside her home. I'm sure you guys saw that story. No. The craziest one, I talk about nothing to see here. was a CNN anchor, I believe it was, blamed myocarditis on a cold. And she went on, and I think they had a doctor on and everything, and it was just like literally nothing to see here, like literally blaming it on a cold. They did not mention the zucchini once.
Of course not.
Not once. And I have a video there in case you guys want to see that. And then for Philly Chris, there was like a bear face on Mars or something. I don't know. I thought that
yeah, no, I didn't hear about that. Huh.
In condiment news, Hellman's mayo is being discontinued in one country. No, not in America. In one country. Okay. And people are up in arms. I figured as avid mustard and condiment people, we got to know about this news.
Why? Is there any reason behind it?
I think it's like sales are low or something. And then people, I mean, it was trending on Twitter. People were up in arms.
So it's not like the government getting rid of it. They didn't get like an anti-mayonnaise.
I don't know. It was New Zealand. Like the entire country's getting rid of it, literally. Huh. And people are like, this is the only mayonnaise I like. Like, what are we going to do? And then, I guess I put something on there from TikTok that Russ will never open. Why I never opened the door. It was a crazy video. And then I had a funny video that we have to do to Philly Chris. It's really something silly. Yeah? And I'm trying to get a new guest on the show. I've been talking to her, so we'll see if she comes on. She went viral on TikTok.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, and the funny video is Biden gives a microphone to who I put? Because it was like this funny video of Biden giving the microphone.
Yeah, I thought he was switching them out on the podium when I saw it. I could be wrong.
I don't think so.
No.
I think he was looking for a comment from a non-human person. Wait, a non-human species. Anyway, so those are videos. Those are videos on there if you want to see anything. If not, then sayonara.
There we go.
Oh, the Disney cartoon. DG saying the Disney cartoon critical race theory.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. I've heard
was pretty
that.
wild.
I have not watched it. The Proud family, louder and prouder.
Yeah, they're evil now.
Yeah. Well, they're rebooting these franchises that were once good, and I remember that from my childhood, and they're injecting woke BS into it.
They just take over these institutions that are a part of our culture, and they use them against us. It's pretty wild to watch them do it.
Yeah.
Sad but true, in my humble opinion, and other people's opinions too.
Yeah.
It's not just.
Well, I'm glad I don't pay for anything from Disney.
Yeah. No way.
I mean, honestly, if somebody wanted to cancel their Disney subscription, anybody watching here, it would be pretty. I mean, it would cost a little bit of money, but if you want to have access to like the classic stuff, like Cinderella and all the princesses, and then maybe some of the more decent shows, I can't really think of
I know some people who
I didn't grow up watching Disney, but if you want to have access to some of the decent shows, I'm sure they're available elsewhere for purchase online, where you can just maybe own them instead of depending on Disney to serve them. And then it might be a separate subscription of some kind, or if you like to sail the seven seas, there's that option. I don't condone it legally. But yeah, you don't have to give your money to Disney every month.
Please don't.
What about Frozen?
Just buy it on DVD or Blu-ray. They have a combo pack.
All right.
That's all.
Take two.
One more time. I think I knocked my.
Oh, you knocked your mic out.
I
was wondering. I'm like,
Mike
is not going to do it, or did we lose Mike?
Mike got knocked out.
Yeah,
the microphone, not the.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, DG. Disney's no good now.
Yeah, been a lot of weird subliminal stuff in there.
Disney was smelly to begin with.
Yeah, I think we're good.
We're
good.
We're good now.
Yeah.
That's all the time we got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor Dave Whitney, Professor of Philadelphia. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.